Hey guys, how are you doing today?
Doing good.
Good. We all have a decent week so far? Yeah. All right, cool.
Yes.
Did everyone by chance get an
Cool.
opportunity to look at the homework from last night? Yeah.
Yes.
What about the quick reading?
Yes.
It's okay if you didn't, no big deal, because this is a brand new unit. I know last unit we went over the chemicals inside of biology and how their electronegativity play a role in bond formation and stability of certain things inside of our body. That being said, we are going to dive a little bit deeper and talk about cells and organelles starting today. This is the start of the new unit. Now, I wanted to go over real quick the objectives we are going to be doing today. Did everyone get the worksheets that I sent out?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, go ahead and pull up the one that says objectives and 3-level comprehension guide. Everyone have that one up? Okay, if you don't, I'm going to read off some of the things regardless, so it's okay. So again, the topic for today is going to be the structure.
Wait, hold on. Which worksheet was it?
It was the resources, objectives, and 3-level comprehension guide.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, cool. So again, today's lesson is going to be over structures and functions of cells. By the end of this unit, you should be able to list the types of organelles, explain cell organelle functions, illustrate the parts of a cell, that being animal and plant cell. That includes prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. And then lastly, compare plant and animal cells, including prokaryotic versus eukaryotic cells. Now, I know all of what I just said kind of probably just went right over your head. Those terms do not sound familiar at all, and they should be unfamiliar. You guys are learning all this stuff for the first time. Do not be anxious. Don't feel like you're behind, because you're not. Okay? All right, so let's go into the importance of these objectives. So you guys, we're all, this is a first level biology course you're going to take. Let's say you want to take one later down the road. Everything you're learning in this course is going to be built upon. So this is literally like the skeleton that you are building. And then everything from here, you're going to add on the muscles, the tissues, whatever other science class you're going to that is cellular biology related. That being said, bigger picture of today. So we're going to be learning about the organelles and their functions. More importantly, by knowing this, you're going to be able to see why some scientists do some medical treatments versus others, why we need to study this metabolic system in our body, because it shows us A, B, C, D. So large implications. I'll give you all an example at the very, very end. But let's go ahead and go back to the objectives page and the 3-level comprehension guide. I want you all to go ahead and look at the essential questions. What are cell organelles and how do their structures relate to their functions? The next one, what are the different types of cells and how are they different? We're going to start focusing on those first, but I want to ask you guys real quick, how does our body function? I know that's a very broad question, but do we have any ideas?
Maybe something just with cells like working.
Has to do with our cells, yeah. If we're thinking a little bit bigger, our body functions with connection of the digestive system to the skeletal system and all these other systems like the nervous system. They all have interrelated systems between them. That's how our body's able to function. If one of them were to fail, the whole thing fails. I wanted to connect that kind of to cells. Now, Dane, I know you like cars. Think of it kind of us being a car. We are a car, and we have all separate parts. Cars have engines, they have tires, they have the body itself. They have all these different components and systems that allow them to run, right? It's the same idea. So as we're going through all of this, keep in mind, we are just like a car. We have all these separate components. We're just learning a little bit about those components and what they do. That being said, let's go ahead and move on to the organelles worksheet. That was the one y'all worked on last night. I kind of wanted to go over some of the definitions. I wasn't sure if everyone was going to get the definitions from Google or studying with a friend or from the textbook, or even from my online website. So I wanted to go over them real quick. Can everyone go ahead and pull that one up? Awesome. Okay. Can someone read for me one of the definitions they got off of the organelles worksheet? Maybe something on like the mitochondria.
I can read the mitochondria.
Okay, what did you get?
Okay, so I got that the definition, the function based on the match stuff, it produces the energy a cell needs to carry out its functions, and it is the mighty powerhouse. So I guess
Okay, nice.
it kind of like, it's like, yeah, it provides energy and power to the cell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good job.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Let's look real quick at chloroplast. Did anyone find the definition for chloroplast? No? Any guesses maybe?
Yeah, it just to hold on, give me a second to unmute. But the chloroplast, I got gel-like fluid where organelles are found.
No, not for chloroplast. I think you might actually be thinking of,
Cytoplasm. Sorry.
yeah, the cytoplasm. That's correct for the cytoplasm, though.
Okay, sorry.
Totally correct. The cytoplasm, think of it kind of like a pool. So imagine all of us, we're all these little different organelles. Let's say Emily's a mitochondria, I'm the nucleus, Dane's a ribosome, and Connor, let's say you're like a smoothie R. Those are all different organelles. Now put those organelles in a pool. So we're all swimming in a pool. The cytoplasm is like the pool of the organelle. It's where all of the organelles sit. Make sense? Yeah? All right, cool. It's just that fluid inside. Let's now go to cell wall. Dane, did you get anything for cell wall?
Yeah, I got that it's the ridged outer layer
Of a what? You broke up, I'm sorry.
of a plant cell.
Of a plant cell, right. Now, did y'all notice how in some of these definitions it says specifically plant cell or specifically animal cell? Yeah. Now, if we're looking at the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes, which you guys shouldn't even know those terms, I don't expect you to. That being said, do you know what either of those terms mean or what they might have to do with?
Is prokaryote like more simple of a cell than a eukaryote?
It is, yeah. And eukaryotes are more complex, kind of like us. So what I was getting to with that, I was talking about plant and animal cell. Those are both examples of a eukaryotic cell. They're a little bit more complex versus, let's say, a prokaryotic cell. If plants and animals are eukaryotes, then prokaryotes are going to be something like bacteria. To get a little bit more specific, really break down the word prokaryotic. Pro in Latin actually means no. That is a translation for no. When it says no, it means no nucleus, because the nucleus is the defining factor for being either a prokaryote or a eukaryote. If you have a eukaryote, you are going to be more complex of an organism, just like what Connor said. But more so, you're going to have a nucleus. Now, a nucleus is what holds all of the genetic information, the DNA inside of it. Prokaryote, they don't have a nucleus, therefore their DNA is kind of just floating around in the cell. What was that fluid inside of the cell we just called?
It started with a C.
Cytoplasm.
Cytoplasm, right. So in the cytoplasm of a prokaryote, the DNA is actually free floating. It's not membrane bound, meaning it's not inside of an organelle, that organelle being the nucleus. Is that all making sense so far? So do we have any questions at all? Like over that little portion right there. Difference between prokaryote, eukaryote makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any?
I think that things will slowly connect.
Okay.
Are there any other examples of like a prokaryote, like other than bacteria?
Not really, no. All we're going to be talking about is bacteria. Bacteria are pretty much exclusively prokaryotic. That was a good question. I actually did want to talk about different types of eukaryotes. So while I said yes, one second, Emily. While I said yes, plants and animals are eukaryotic, fungal species are also eukaryotic. So little mushrooms you cut up and eat, little button mushrooms, those are also eukaryotic organisms, surprisingly enough. Same with protists. Emily, what was your question?
You answered my question. I was just going to ask if plants and animals were eukaryotic, but you just said that, so.
They are, yeah. Now this is a lot of organization, a lot of categorization of things. So for now, at the very, very top, if you're going to categorize something and picture it in your brain, you have prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. Prokaryotes, bacteria. Everything else, eukaryotes. Now, under the branch of eukaryotes, we discussed some examples like plants, animals, fungus, and protists. We are also in this lesson going to be differentiating between things like plants versus animals. Here's an example right here. Do y'all know what photosynthesis is? Or we've probably heard of it, right? Like in middle school? Yeah.
Something to do with like sunlight.
Yeah, exactly. It has something to do with sunlight. Photo meaning sunlight. Photosynthesis means the creation of something using sunlight. Photosynthesis is actually the process of plants creating food via sunlight energy. Now, photo means light. Can we process light?
No, not like through our eyes, but not in a way to produce food.
Exactly, not in a way to produce food. So there's something called a chloroplast, which we just mentioned, didn't we? Did we mention chloroplast just now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I answered that one.
Good, thank you. So chloroplasts, again, are found only in plant cells. Remember, some say plant, some say animal only. Now, in plant cells, chloroplasts are in there for the reason that plants are going to take the light they're getting and transfer it into food via that light energy. Do you think that we are going to have chloroplasts?
No.
No. I want y'all, as when we're going through this stuff, and we're going to be doing this throughout the whole entire week, always break it down a little bit more simple. Everything connects whether you know it or not.
So it's like prokaryotic, eukaryotic, and under eukaryotic, you have plant and animal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hey, Connor, can we focus on the lesson? Thank you. Okay, so were there any other terms on the organelles worksheet that y'all had questions on? It seems like for the most part, y'all got all of them matched correctly, at least the ones I asked.
Could you explain Golgi bodies a little bit more? I mean, I matched it and I think I got the right answer, but
so
could
Golgi
you just
bodies,
explain more about like their function, like what they're, like what they do?
yeah, so another word for Golgi bodies is going to be Golgi apparatus. Essentially, what the Golgi does, imagine it kind of like a UPS system. You are a protein and you're taking your protein package to UPS. UPS is the Golgi body. The Golgi body is going to take that protein package and modify it a little bit, put on new stickers to allow it to go to whatever place it needs to. We can't ship out a really big package on our own, can we? You'd need like a lot of like stamps and whatnot. It's not that easy. It's easier just to go to the Golgi, have them do all the work, and ship out the protein. That's basically what it does. The Golgi takes in proteins, modifies it a little bit more, puts on the right stickers, and then sends it out. We all have different addresses, right? So think of it kind of like that. The Golgi looks at my package and is like, oh, this is the address they're trying to send it to. This is in San Marcos, Texas. They put on like a molecular address for it using sugar tags. So y'all know we have sugars and fats and all that kind of stuff in our body, right? We take the sugars, and there's different types of sugars, but we take these sugars and we arrange them in a way on the protein that basically translates as a molecular code saying, hey, you're going here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes those like the proteins and materials and it sends them places. Is it sending it places in the cells or it's sending it places in the body?
That's actually a really good question because it's doing both.
Oh, okay. So it sends it to other like parts of the cell, but it also can send it out of the cell to like whatever our body would need.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how it all functions.
No, but you're onto something. You're completely right, and you have a very good train of thought going. Like you're really inquiring about the information. That's a good train of thought. As we're going through all this, always think, how does this connect? What does this do? Can it also do this? Because Emily, you just made a complete guess, and you were completely right. It ships things inside of the cell and outside of the cell. But that was the only question. We have no more. All right, cool. So I just wanted to go over some of the definitions from that organelle worksheet. I'm glad some of y'all had a chance to look at it. I want y'all to take some of that information that we just reviewed and I went over and apply some of it to the 3-level comprehension guide. Did y'all get that one that I also sent out? Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead and pull up
Yeah.
that one. While you're pulling it up, I'm just going to explain what it is. So the title of it is the 3-level comprehension guide. Essentially, it's a series of higher level questioning that's going to kind of guide you on your way to learning this information about organelles and different types of cells. Level 1, they're really, really simple questions. They're more so straightforward, like who, what, where, why. The level 2 questions are going to be more interpretive. So on top of having a blunt answer, it's going to need a longer description with it. The level 3 questions are going to be the hardest questions you're going to have to answer. Now, I don't want you guys to answer the level 3 questions at all today. In fact, I don't even expect you to answer level 1 and 2 altogether. For the reason that you're just now learning this information, y'all have all the information you need, that being all the terms, definitions from the organelles worksheet. It's just a matter of applying that to these questions. Again, these questions are just to guide you through the process of learning about the organelles and then cellular types and their functions. We all have it up? Okay, cool. So this is my time where I am kind of done lecturing a little bit about some of the information. I want you guys to work together. Now I understand it's kind of a small class. So I am going to be working with you guys, but as a student, not really giving direct information. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right, so if y'all want, go ahead and unmute yourselves, and we can go ahead and start on this. So the first question says, what are the 2 types of cells? How do they differ? And then which one can be further broken down into 2 more subcategories? So let's attack the first question. Now, what are the 2 types of cells? Y'all discuss that amongst yourselves.
It's prokaryote and eukaryote, right?
Don't ask me. Y'all are talking to each other.
The 2 different types of cells?
Yeah, it's the
I think that's right.
prokaryotic. Yeah, prokaryotic
Okay.
and eukaryotic.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so follow-up question for that then, when you're taking these notes. Remember the definition of prokaryotic versus eukaryotic. What was that again?
One of them is for bacteria.
Bacteria, right. Does anyone know which one that is?
It's
It's
prokaryotic.
prokaryote, right?
Yes, Dane, what does prokaryotic mean? What does pro mean? Do you remember that?
It's Latin for without.
Without, yeah, it means no, exactly.
Like none or no.
So prokaryotic means no, specifically no nucleus.
Okay.
So eukaryotic would be the opposite, does have the presence of a nucleus.
Unicellular
What are you talking about, Connor?
is only unicellular. Prokaryotic.
What does everyone else think?
Well, it has no wait, say that again?
Prokaryotic is only it's only unicellular. Is that just means it's solo, right?
It does,
Like
yes.
the one
Which question are you referring to though, Connor?
Well, just question 1 is this another part of another, I guess, just question 1.
like
You're
a way for
actually-
it to differ.
Well, the difference between it was asking what's different between the prokaryotic and eukaryotic, right?
Kind of, yes. You're actually answering the next question. Which one can be broken down into 2 more subcategories?
Okay,
So,
That would be the eukaryotic because it's plant and animal. But I have a question about that unicellular. So no?
not yet.
I'm going to say no, but I'm not going to say why.
Wait, okay, can
Connor
I
just
ask
said
a question
something
about the prokaryotic?
Yes.
So if it's unicellular, that means that it's literally one cell and that's the organism. Like that's like, it's not a group of cells, it's just one cell and that's how it lives.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Well,
okay, I thought that the subcategories was eukaryotic because I thought it was plant and animal, but that's wrong.
That's, it's not wrong, but maybe I should have been more specific in my question. There are essentially 2 types of eukaryotic cells. There's different organisms that we see, but 2 types. What I was getting at was what Connor was saying, the unicellular, and then the other one was multicellular. So eukaryotic cells can be unicellular, meaning it's just literally one cell, that's how it lives, and it dies as one cell. Or it can be multicellular, like animals, plants, fungus. Does that make sense?
Okay, what would be an example of a eukaryotic unicellular thing, like organism?
A fungal spore. That is a
Oh,
fungal
okay.
spore is like, how do I describe it? It's like a very microscopic miniature cell that kind of acts as an egg for fungus. So there are no
Oh.
unicellular examples really for animals or plants. That's more so in reference to fungal species.
So a fungus isn't a plant?
No, they're actually different.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So, all right. So the two types of cells, y'all got the prokaryotic, eukaryotic. Perfect, great, awesome. How do they differ? The presence of the nucleus. And then Connor accidentally answered the last part of the question. We love to see it. Which one can be further broken down into two subcategories? That was eukaryotic. It can be either multicellular or unicellular. Now let's go back to prokaryotic specifically. Can prokaryotic be multicellular? Let's think what prokaryotic is. Is that bacteria?
It can't be multicellular.
No, it can't. It's just unicellular. So eukaryotes can be broken down into two other subcategories versus prokaryotic cannot. Does that make sense? All right, so we did one question by ourselves. Y'all go ahead and I want y'all to skip the second question under level 1 and go ahead and move down to the third one. What organelles pertain only to prokaryotes and eukaryotes? Remember, when you're looking at this, you have the question is in the black and the hints are in the red ink.
So which ones are?
Which organelles are only prokaryotic versus eukaryotic? I want y'all to discuss that amongst yourself for a little bit.
Okay, hold on.
Well, chloroplast is only in, no, that's plant, not eukaryotic. I get them getting them mixed up.
You're right. No, Emily, you're right. Remember, eukaryotes are plants and animals and fungus.
Oh, so that would be eukaryotic and not prokaryotic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. My brain is kind of like getting a little twisted around right now.
No, you're good. I'm going to correct you guys when you're right or if you think you're wrong. But yeah, I'm not going to leave y'all completely in the dark. I'm going to correct you when you're right, if you're wrong, etc. Dane, do you have any answers to this one?
Prokaryotes are just bacteria, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So does that mean that anything that's intended for an animal or a plant would have to be prokaryotic? Eukaryotic? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
So
exactly
like a cell membrane would be for eukaryotic because that's for plants and animals only.
Cell membranes, it depends on the composition of the cell membrane. So yes and no. So let's say the cell membrane has a component called cell wall inside of it. Then it would be a plant specifically.
Okay.
Or it can also be a prokaryotic organism. Let me see if I can actually draw this out real quick. Share screen. I'm going to draw on a whiteboard real quick. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to draw a P for prokaryotic, E here. Now, what are the different types of eukaryotic organisms?
Plant and animal.
Plants, animals, and what's the other one?
Fungus.
Nice. And then the other one, prokaryotes, is just bacteria. Now, you have to compare and contrast between these two right here. Now, plants, if they, in their cellular membrane, if they have a cell wall, I'm going to put CW for cell wall, that's completely normal. Completely normal. However, animals won't have a cell wall. So if I were to draw a line from these two and draw an arrow, that would be incorrect. However, I could say that bacteria have cell walls because they do. See how there's an overlap in the two? Even though prokaryotes and eukaryotic cells are very different, they still have some similar components. So Emily, you're right in saying something like, oh, if it had a chloroplast, then it would only be a eukaryotic organism. You're completely correct on that. However, there are some components that are going to overlap, and honestly, that is the hardest part throughout all of this, is differentiating between the two.
Okay, that visual reference really helped.
Okay.
Well, I guess, okay, a simple one that we talked about at the beginning would be that a nucleus would only go to a eukaryotic cell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly. All right, y'all looking at the questions? Connor, did you find anything pertaining maybe only to eukaryotes or only to prokaryotes?
Well, I mean, nothing really that we like haven't really touched, I don't think. Yeah.
Well, okay, I found another one.
Okay, what is it?
In the eukaryotic cell, they have, I don't know how to say this, centrioles.
Centrioles.
Say that again?
Centrioles.
Centrioles, not centrioles.
No, you're close. Centrioles. All right, that was one of our vocab terms, was it not? I think it was, yes. What about centrioles?
They're in eukaryotic cells, and animals have them, but and some plants, but not all of them.
Good observation. Yeah, you're completely correct. Centrioles are, again, one of the organelles that we're going to see in some eukaryotes, but not all of them. That's actually one of the organelles that we're not going to talk much about right now at all, because it's involved in a really complex process, and to understand it, like, there's a lot of detail that goes into it. But you're completely correct in saying that. No, there aren't many centrioles in plants. Here's another factor. I want y'all to think about vacuoles. Do y'all see vacuoles on the vocab list?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Does anyone know where vacuoles are found, whether it's prokaryotes or eukaryotes, or specifically a type of organism?
They'd be found in eukaryotes, right? In plant cells, because
Are they found in both?
water.
Both of what? Prokaryotes or eukaryotes, or both plants and animals?
I feel like it'd be prokaryotic and
Oh.
eukaryotic, because wouldn't a single bacteria thing need to be able to store food and water and stuff for itself, right?
No, wait, no.
Like it would function
Vacuole
as its like
would only
tummy.
be in a eukaryote, right? It would only be in a eukaryote.
Okay, so y'all are having some good debate. I will say Connor is right. Bacteria, they don't need any sort of vacuole. They don't need to store their food and water. They kind of just absorb it from the environment. Versus plants, they have what's called a very large central vacuole. Does anyone remember what that does, the central one? No, it's okay. Y'all just read the reading last night. I don't expect you to know it. The large central vacuole, remember, is going to hold a very large amount of water for the plant. Why would a plant want to have a very large vacuole to hold water?
Because that is
In
the
case
main source of nutrients.
it doesn't rain.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so not more so nutrients, but in case it doesn't rain. When it rains, plants, oh my God, they will absorb as much water as possible, and they're going to store it in their vacuoles. Versus, let's say, an animal cell like us. Do we have to store water in our vacuoles?
Yes.
We store a little bit, but do we need to as much as plants?
No, not as
No,
much as
because we're
plants.
able to
Drink water more, like when we want
water
to.
and eat food, so we're the
We're able to
ability
go find water.
Exactly. See, y'all are drawing some good analyzations of these organelles. These are the kind of questions you should be asking yourself. Why would these be seen in this versus that? That's why I wanted you guys to kind of go through these questions, the level 1 and the level 2 questions. So the level 1 questions, as you can see, were more so comparing, contrasting.
I got a question.
Yes.
Would animals like camels have bigger vacuoles than like people, or like different animals have different size vacuoles depending, because you know what I'm saying, like don't camels, like, can't they go for a long time without drinking water?
That's actually a good question, and I don't know that. I would assume, I'm going to say scientifically, I'm going to assume no, for the reason that they're animals. I think they just have more ways to store water within their body, but also aside from having large, like, vacuoles. They don't have a large central vacuole. That's a very distinct feature for plants, but the vacuoles they do have, notice how it says eukaryotes, some of them have vacuoles. Maybe camels are one of those, some, and for the reason that they can go without, water for prolonged periods of time.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, like whenever your fingers swell, like when your rings, you can't take your rings off, and it's because you're like retaining water. I don't really know exactly what that means, but is that your vacuoles like holding water? Is that why your fingers swell?
Not just the vacuoles, it could also be the cell itself.
So the cell, where does the water in the cell go that wouldn't just be the vacuole?
It can just be held inside of the cytoplasm, actually.
Oh.
So that cytoplasm.
So that's like, so whenever your fingers swell because of water retaining water retainment, it's because your cells are literally filled with water, which makes your fingers puff up.
Part of it, yeah. There's a lot more to it, but yes, your cells do hold some of that water, along with very minute amounts in the vacuoles. In addition, it has to do more so with the kind of fluidity of the cells between the blood. Of course, like, there's so many different types of nutrients that run through our blood to our cells. Sometimes our cells have a habit of holding on to a little bit more water than it should. That can contribute to swelling, for example. When you obtain a large amount of salt, your body tries to equalize the salt to water ratio, and to do that, you have water retention. Does that make sense? There's a lot of different factors that can contribute to it. Maybe it's because you're hot. Maybe it's because you're dehydrated. Maybe it's because you just consumed a large amount of salt. All right, so let's go ahead and keep moving on to these 3-level comprehension guide questions. Y'all did a really good job of comparing and contrasting between prokaryotes and eukaryotes and plants and animals, given that y'all literally just learned the organelles last night on your own, and we barely went over a few of them. I want to look at one more question on the level 2, the apply questions. I just want to answer one of them. Let's go ahead and define the factors between plant and animal cells. Do y'all see that under level 2 questions?
The 4 defining structures?
Yeah. So we said one of them earlier were what? It had to do with light.
The chloroplast.
Yeah, exactly, the chloroplast, because the chloroplast is what takes light and then makes it into energy for the plant. Now, also earlier, we talked about, I don't remember who pointed it out, but it was a good observation. We talked about the cellular components of the cell membrane. Now, plants and animals and prokaryotes, on top of these eukaryotic organisms, both have cellular membranes. However, when I drew on the whiteboard, I showed you guys how plants, which are eukaryotes, have a cell wall, and so do bacteria. But animals, which are eukaryotes, don't have a cell wall. Now, that is another component that also helps us, I guess, identify which organism is which. If we were to go in a lab right now and y'all saw the components of a cell wall, you would know that it's for sure not an animal cell, because we don't have that. But you could at least narrow it down to it being a prokaryotic organism, like a bacteria, or a fungal species, or a plant. So there's a lot of different features we look at, but now we know 1 is chloroplast, 2 is a cell wall. Can you guys think of anything else, maybe something we just talked about having to do with water?
The vacuole. The plant.
The central vacuole.
Yeah, the plant has a bigger one because it needs to hold on to water.
Exactly, perfect. And there's one we haven't talked about, and we're not going to talk about until later this week. It's called the plasmodesmata. Don't even worry about writing it down yet, but it's a long word. When I say it again next time, y'all are going to remember it, but it's a plasmodesmata. Essentially, there are different ways our cells connect to one another. Imagine, we know cells as like free floating, right? Not being connected to anything. That's actually not true. Cells are actually connected through a variety of ways. In plants, one being called plasmodesmata. It's a way where plant cells are able to like connect and make such a tight connection that nothing really can go through it right here, but the cells themselves can transfer nutrients and all these other different things. Does that make sense? All right, so those are the defining factors. I want you guys in a second to go ahead and keep working on that 3-level comprehension guide. I will step back a little bit more. I'm still going to point out when you're wrong, when you're right, but work together in answering those questions. But real quick, earlier I said I was going to outline a process that I guess allows you to see the importance of studying cellular organelles. Do you remember me mentioning that? Yeah, okay. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to draw on the whiteboard, and I'm going to show you guys a little process. So, I don't remember who it was earlier. Emily, was it you who asked about the Golgi apparatus earlier?
I think so. The Golgi bodies?
Golgi bodies, yes, also known as Golgi apparatus.
Okay, yes.
So it was funny you actually mentioned that, because that's something I wanted to talk about at the very end of this lesson for you guys to see, oh, this is why the study of organelles and different cells is important. So real quick, this is a process we're going to learn about in crucial detail in about 2 months later in the semester. It's called the endomembrane system. Now first I'm going to draw a cell. I'm not the best drawer, so please excuse me. Now, what I just drew is just a basic cell. You don't know what kind of cell, but I'm going to tell you what it is without drawing all the components. What I am drawing is an animal cell. Now, animal cells are prokaryotic or eukaryotic?
Eukaryotic.
Eukaryotic, so they're going to have a what?
A nucleus.
Yes, good job, Dane. So here's the nucleus.
And a cell membrane?
Yeah, they're going to have a cell membrane, but no cell wall, right?
Right, because cell walls plants.
Nice. So, y'all see my mouse? Can you see it hovering on Zoom?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this right here is a nucleus, a smaller circle. The bigger circle is going to be the animal cell itself. Now, y'all did the worksheet on organelles. You know there's a lot more organelles that are in the animal cell, but I'm not going to draw them just yet because it's going to get in the way of this drawing right here. Now let me go ahead and start describing this process. So endomembrane system. Essentially, the endomembrane system is just the process of creating a protein. That's it. Proteins serve a variety of functions, whether it's transporting molecules or if it's just acting as a structural component. Our hair has certain proteins. My hair is curly because it has proteins that make it curl, versus Emily, your hair is straight because it has the proteins that make it straight. Now, let's go ahead and talk about what is held inside the nucleus. We know DNA is held inside the nucleus. Here is my little DNA, my little double helix. Now, DNA is going to be transferred into what is called RNA. Dan, I think you asked me about RNA just before we started the video. So this is DNA, this is RNA. Think of it like different languages. Let's say I'm speaking DNA right now, I'm speaking English. Then I translate it into something like Spanish. Let's say that's our RNA molecule. They say the same thing, but they're in different languages. This right here is a genetic code that codes for this animal cell. Let's say it's a cat. And then this one right here is the genetic code for the cat, just in a different language. Does that make sense so far? Okay.
Why does it have to do that?
Really good question. Look at the size of this molecule versus this one.
It's like smaller and like not as complicated.
Yes. Which one is going to fit through this little door right here?
I was going to say, does it have to do with fitting through something?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
I just drew a little door. That's called the nuclear pore. So there's tiny little pores, like little holes. I want you to think of them as doors inside of the nuclear envelope. This little size right here is too small for the DNA to fit. So it gets translated into RNA to leave the cell. So, or not the cell, leave the nucleus. So that RNA is going to leave, here it is right here, outside of the nucleus, but still inside the cell. Now, this RNA is going to go through a lot of processing for it to become a protein. I'm going to save a lot of details and just kind of paraphrase it a little bit. Now, this is one of the organelles we discussed in the homework. It was the rough ER. The rough ER is coded as rough because it has a whole bunch of ribosomes on it. The ribosomes give it a really rough texture. Now, the rough ER is what takes the RNA and translates it to a new language, that one being a protein. I'm trying to draw little dots. Here's the protein. However, remember how we talked about the protein doesn't really know where it goes until it's shipped to the Golgi apparatus, aka the Golgi bodies? Okay, so we're going to get into that. So this mRNA, remember, just went through this rough ER. The rough ER, because of the ribosomes, is able to take the RNA molecule and code it into what's called a protein. That protein doesn't know where to go, so next it actually travels to the Golgi apparatus, aka the Golgi body, the one I just drew right here. It's going to go inside the Golgi body. Remember, Golgi body is like a UPS system. It's going to take it, it's going to put on all these different tags for it, and it's going to tell it, you're going to go to the Austin of the cell. You're going to go to the Dallas of the cell. Oh, you're actually going to go to New York. That's outside of the cell. You're going to go up north toward the body. Does that make sense? All right, so I drew out the process for you guys. Very simple, very sweet. Now, can you guys give me any ideas of maybe why it would be important to study this process? Can we think of anything off the top of our heads?
Just maybe research in general.
Research in general, yeah, just why not? There's always more to learn. Here's an example right here. Maybe a certain person has a really high production of a certain amount of protein, but scientists, doctors don't know why. Let's say for some reason, let's call this protein ABCD. Let's say protein ABCD for some reason is detrimental to the patient. How are they going to find where it's created? They know it's going to be created within the cell, but they know there's all these different components in which it could be modified, in which it's overproducing itself. Maybe when it's being created to a protein, there's an error in the Golgi where it's putting on all these labels on so many of them and it keeps shipping them out and the Golgi just doesn't stop. So maybe it's an error in their Golgi. That could be a possibility. Or it has to pass through the cellular membrane to get outside of the cell. So maybe it's an error with the cellular membrane. Maybe the cellular membrane is too fluid and it's allowing for a quick release of proteins too fast. Does that make sense? Yeah,
Yes.
do y'all have any questions on the information?
So it went from DNA to RNA when it simplifies, and then when it leaves the nucleus, it goes to mRNA.
Yes, and that's a process we'll talk about later. But essentially, you know it as RNA is mRNA, mRNA is RNA. It's the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I'm going to give you all a little bit more time to work on those comprehension questions. I'm still going to be here answering as we go. But good job so far.